Hi everyone, this is a lesson on man-made fibre, and we're going to go back in history now a little bit to understand how all this came about. With the event of World War One, actually everything was kind of changing totally. So the need for women to have more comfortable wear, they were like, they were more out there. They said, well, we have a voice too. We don't just want to be in like pretty skirts. We want to go out. We want to go running and swimming and whatnot. And you can see here the lovely girls with their cigarettes. They didn't know those days they were unhealthy. So all of these fantastic clothes were still made out of wool, and that wasn't the most comfortable. And in 1928 we've had the very first Speedo. Then it was just like a steam engine that you could not stop anymore, because once you had that, women wanted to wear trousers, they wanted to be more comfortable and be in all the sports. And you can see here some girls playing basketball, and just look at what their sports gear looked like. I mean, that was not very comfy. So things really had to change. And then came something that was very important to the development here, and that was in 1940 when the Olympic Games were cancelled. And that had a huge impact because people still wanted the sports. So I would call it sports went to the movies instead of to the Olympic Games. The ladies were wearing these glamorous swimsuits like Esther Williams in her films. I mean, unbelievably beautiful. But the fabric they used for that, they finally developed something or found out that you could use rubber and make it into something called latex. But these fabrics, they were like really bad because they deteriorated when you washed them really quickly, and of course they were nothing like the stretchy stuff we have got today. And here's a lovely picture of Esther Williams when she was swimming. I mean, it was the age of the swimsuit. Now we had a problem there that these were also athletes, these ladies, and everything needed to be more comfortable because at the time, although really fantastic, all these swimsuits still had a zip at the back because else you wouldn't have been able to get into it. And to make sure that the woman's figure still looked fantastic, they did something that was called the girdled swimsuit. And that swimsuit had panels in there across the tummy area so that you couldn't see the unwanted curves and bulges. In 1946, not the 60s, but in 1946, this was unheard of, a man called Louis Réard, he designed the two-piece swimsuit and advertised it as the world's smallest bathing suit. And he saw this when people were rolling up, or ladies were rolling up their swimsuits to get a better tan. So he thought, I'll do that. And he named it after the bomb that detonated in the South Pacific near the Bikini Reef. And he called it the bikini. Native Americans needed to kind of an excuse to not wear this two-piece swimsuit called a bikini, but to stick with a swimsuit because it was more modest. And Fred Cole said, and listen to this, he said, French girls have very short legs. Swimsuits have to be hiked up at the sides to make their legs look longer. I think that's really funny. Roll on now, the new development. We're a decade and a half on. In order to facilitate a more comfortable swimsuit, in 1959, the company DuPont produced a synthetic fiber from something called polyurethanes, basically crude oil, and that was very elastic and stronger than rubber, and that made it really ideal for swimwear fabrics. And this totally revolutionized this industry. And it was Joseph Chivers that found this fiber or developed it, and he called it spandex, and we all know spandex still today. And it comes from the word expanding. When we were talking originally about fibers, we said there's an organic compound from which the natural fibers are made, like wool, for example, protein, and we've got the cotton, which is made out of cellulose. And the same goes for the man-made fibers, basically crude oil. Now, what you're most interested in, and I'm always most interested in, is how does that actually affect like the stuff I buy, but how can I see this in action? And let's start with elastomerics. So we know that when you have something like spandex and you've got the really stretchy stuff that you can buy in the shops, knitted materials usually, you wonder, why do they stretch and recover shape? So here is why. You have got like two chains basically. You've got a copolymer, so like, you know, like a marriage of somebody that is really rigid and somebody else that's all floaty and lovely. Okay, so just think of it like that. And they walk together hand in hand, but the lovely floaty person can pull away a little bit and come back a little bit. And because the rigid part is in steps as well, you've got like little gaps in between, and that can be then pulled apart, and you have an infinite network, and you can make like these fantastic long threads with it basically, right? That they are made into fibers, and that's why they stretch. And the same goes for, say, your plastic balls at home. Obviously they don't stretch as much, but they're not as rigid, are they? They're all made in a way that your polymers can still move and that your plastic doesn't break straight away when handled roughly. Let's have a quick look then at the properties of these three. They're all the same brands. We've already said spandex, elastane and lycra are the same. So they can be stretched 500 times their own length without breaking and still recover its original form. We only need 3%, 5% is quite a lot to get those stretch qualities. And because polyurethane is waterproof, not resistant, but waterproof, you get it as a coating on swimming pools, you get it on top of rain jackets to make sure that none of the rain comes in. We've got it in gloves. Do you remember Abba and Agneta and her fabulous outfit? I mean, if you're old enough to remember it anyway. And we've got Speedo, we've got the swimsuits and everything. We've got tights, we've got it in jeans, and everything made with these fibers is much more comfortable because it has stretch. I think when you're talking about man-made fibers, I think you have to mention polyester. The polyester fiber is made into all sorts of things, including plastic bottles, and that is why when you recycle plastic bottles, you can make fibers from it. And the most famous one is probably the Catatonia fleece, used in high-performance sportswear. And the compound it's made out of is called polyethylene terephthalate or simply called PET or PET. They are different to polyurethane because the qualities of that are different. So the polyester fiber characteristics are these: is incredibly strong, and it does not stretch, it does not shrink. Basically, it's crisp and resilient when it's wet and when it's dry. It's fairly wrinkle resistant, mildew resistant, abrasion resistant. Now let's go back in history a little bit again, to a bit of chemical history of the 1930s, because we've already said that swimsuits and all that, it all used to be made from rubber, and then it all changed, and the company behind all this was DuPont. They were the leading company in doing their own basic research programs at like universities, and that was never heard of, that companies would actually do that, and that was absolutely super. And this idea really paid off because they got loads of young people in there working for them that did these major inventions, and one of them was neoprene, and that was 1930. And then remarkably, in that very same month, the group invented another substance that is today known as nylon. And neoprene is one of the things that I just wanted to talk to you at the very end about because it's so cool. During World War II, in fact, all of the neoprene made in the US went to the war effort to make tires and fan belts and seals. Now enter the 1950s and the magic Jack O'Neill, who was the founder of O'Neill and the biggest surf and sportswear brands in the world at the time. And born 1923 in Colorado, he moved to California, and he was a fisherman, a salesman, and all sorts of other jobs. But he really loved the surf and to bodyboard, and I do actually too. I tell you, bodyboarding is so much fun. And in some parts of the year, even in California, the sea's like really cold. I tell you, I don't even go in now, and it's only like the end of October. He was quite frustrated with that, always, freezing his bits off, basically. And so he created a wetsuit in the early 50s. And this is so funny because he discovered this fabric on the floor of an aeroplane while he was taking a flight. He saw it on, the floor basically. And he thought, well, this is the stuff I need to make what's known today as a wetsuit. So he ordered absolute masses of this material, stitched it together, and made the very first wetsuits in 1952, and he called his shop the Surf Shop. So I think I have blown your mind, and we're just going to have a little look at the modern materials here. So you can see, like 1920s, you had like Speedo and Lastex, from latex into nylon and neoprene, and then we're going on to the bikini and spandex, and finally we have got all the stretch materials in the 1960s. And these days, sky's the limit. We're making fibers out of everything, and why we need 94% of our clothing still made out of crude oil basically is beyond me, because we should be using our natural fibers more. So thank you for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you back next time. It's going to be interesting. Bye for now.